a rotating universe, a universe where all the galaxies turn the same way and where the geometry is such that you keep on going, living your life, and you come around, coming back, and can live it over again. Have you ever had a moment where you felt like you were stuck in a routine, one that you couldn't quite explain, yet it felt like it was dragging you through the same motions over and over again? That overwhelming sense of repetition in daily life is more than just a coincidence. In fact, it could be a sign of something much deeper. A loop, a trap, a cycle that we don't even know we're caught in, the existence loop. You might dismiss it as just life, as part of the hustle, but if you look closely, you'll see that most of us are living in a cycle that we have not been taught how to break. It's not just about the mundane routines we repeat, but about the invisible forces, thoughts, and emotions that govern us, keeping us on an endless treadmill of existence. And the scariest part? We're not even aware of it. Think about the story of Sisyphus, the figure from Greek mythology doomed to push a boulder up a mountain only for it to roll back down every time he reaches the top. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how long he persevered, he could never escape his task. His endless struggle mirrors the loop many of us find ourselves in. No matter how hard we work or how far we go, we end up back at square one, feeling as if we're stuck in an eternal return. But here's the real question. What if this cycle isn't just about daily routines or the idea of personal failure? What if this loop is far bigger and more insidious than we could have ever imagined? What if instead of just being part of the system, we are trapped in it, woven into a fabric of existence that keeps us going around in circles? The first step in understanding how we're trapped is to acknowledge that we are trapped. The world doesn't teach us this. Our society keeps us busy hustling for success, measuring our worth by our possessions, or seeking validation in fleeting moments of happiness. All of these things are distractions, subtle but effective tools keeping us in the loop, making us think that as long as we're moving, we're doing okay. But are we? In the teachings of Buddha, there's the concept of samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This isn't just about the afterlife. It's about the way we live. Samsara refers to the continuous cycle of suffering caused by attachment, craving, and ignorance. We desire more, chase after things we think will bring us fulfillment, and when we get them, we feel satisfied for a moment, only to fall back into longing for something else. It's an endless, repetitive loop that keeps us spinning. Similarly, in Hinduism, there's a concept called Maya, the illusion of the material world. We are convinced that what we see and experience is all that there is. But in reality, these material experiences are just an illusion, distracting us from the true, unchanging nature of reality. We are so focused on this illusion that we don't even see the loop we're trapped in, and the deeper we go into the illusion, the harder it becomes to recognize we're living in a never-ending circle. There are even parallels in modern psychology. The self-sabotage we experience in our personal and professional lives, when we keep repeating mistakes despite knowing better, can be seen as a kind of loop. We try to move forward but always seem to take a step back. Even when we know what we should do, our minds, shaped by years of conditioning, keep us in the cycle, making it feel as if we are prisoners of our own thoughts and behaviors. Just like Sisyphus could never escape his fate, without realizing it, we can't escape this loop without first becoming aware of it. Most of us live as if we're the boulder, constantly rolling down the hill of our own lives, trapped in a pattern that we have no control over. Our jobs, our relationships, our self-worth, and even our sense of happiness are defined by a system we were born into, one that tells us what success should look like, what it means to be happy, and what our purpose is. But what if that system is a cage? Look at the nature of time itself. We measure our lives by calendars and clocks, by deadlines and appointments. But does that really capture the essence of life? Are we simply caught in the ticking of a clock? Or is there something more? Every day feels like a repeat of the last, a blur of hours that blend together in one continuous stream. When we wake up tomorrow, will it feel different than today? Or will it be just another day in the same loop? The fact that we are even asking ourselves this question reveals how trapped we truly are. The philosopher Albert Einstein once said, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results." But it's not just about personal behavior. It's about a collective existence that keeps us stuck in a loop. Society teaches us to measure our success by material wealth, to believe that more is always better, that happiness is something to be achieved rather than realized. We chase after these external markers of success, but we are never satisfied, always feeling like there's more to be done. And with each passing day, we continue to seek without realizing that this search is the very thing keeping us trapped. We are taught to strive and hustle, to reach for what's next. But what happens when we get there? Does it feel as fulfilling as we imagined? Or does the yearning just return stronger than before? The quest for meaning, for success, for happiness. It's all part of the loop, and the more we chase it, the further away it seems to get. And what about the way we perceive ourselves? We are constantly told who we should be, how we should look, what we should think. All these external pressures feed into the loop, creating a sense of inadequacy, of never being enough. We live to meet other people's expectations, and in doing so, we lose sight of who we really are. This too is a trap, one that keeps us living in a state of fear, always worrying about how we appear to others, never taking the time to reflect on who we truly are underneath it all. So if we are indeed trapped in an existence loop, how do we break free? How do we escape the endless cycle that keeps us bound in the pursuit of things that never bring lasting peace? The answer lies in recognizing the loop for what it is and realizing that the path to freedom is not found in trying to escape the system, but in stepping outside of it. We will explore that in the next part, but first let's pause and reflect. Do you feel like you're trapped? Or are you just going through the motions, unaware of the cage around you, the invisible bars of the cage? If the first step to breaking free from an existence loop is recognizing that we're trapped, then the second step is understanding how the trap works. Because here's the truth. This isn't just a physical or external cycle. It's not just about the routines we repeat every day, the jobs we go to, the relationships we struggle with, or the goals we chase but never seem to fully reach. Those are only symptoms of something much deeper. The real prison isn't built of stone or steel. It's built of perception. And the scariest part? We are both the prisoner and the guard. Think about a goldfish in a bowl. It swims in circles, never questioning the limits of its world because the glass is invisible to it. To the fish, the bowl is the only reality. It doesn't know about the ocean. It doesn't know that beyond the thin, clear walls of its world, there's something vast and limitless. The fish doesn't escape because it doesn't even realize it's trapped. Now here's the uncomfortable question. What if we're the fish? What if our beliefs, our emotions, our very identities are the glass walls of our own existence loop? We live inside them, convinced that what we see and experience is the full extent of reality. But in truth, we are confined within an invisible structure, one we mistake for freedom. This isn't just a metaphor. Across different philosophies and spiritual traditions, this idea appears again and again. In Hinduism and Buddhism, Maya is the illusion that keeps us trapped in samsara, making us believe that material existence is all there is. In Plato's allegory of the cave, prisoners are shackled in darkness, watching shadows on a wall, thinking that the shadows are reality, until one of them breaks free and realizes there's an entire world outside. We are those prisoners. The shadows on the wall are the illusions we accept as truth, our desires, our fears, our assumptions about what life is supposed to be. And the first illusion that keeps us trapped is the illusion of control. We like to think we are in control of our lives. We make plans, we set goals, we try to shape our futures. But how often do those plans fall apart? How often do we find ourselves pushed in directions we never intended to go? No matter how much we try to grip life, it seems to have a mind of its own. Yet we keep trying. We hold on to control so tightly that we don't realize it's controlling us. We spend our days trying to predict, to secure, to strategize, but in doing so, we become prisoners to our own need for certainty. And here's the painful irony. True freedom is not found in control. It's found in surrender. But surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping outside the loop, seeing it for what it is, and realizing that much of what we stress over, what we fight for, what we believe defines us, is just another part of the illusion. Take fear, for example. Fear is one of the most powerful tools of the loop. It keeps us in line. It tells us what we can and can't do. Fear convinces us that we must chase success or we'll be failures, that we must please others or we'll be alone, that we must follow the rules even when they don't make sense, or risk losing everything. But whose rules are these? Who told us what success is? Who taught us to fear failure, rejection, uncertainty? Most of our fears weren't born inside of us. They were given to us by society, by upbringing, by systems that rely on our compliance. And once we absorb these fears, they control us. They become the bars of the cage. So how do we break free? By questioning everything. Start with the simple things. Why do we wake up and immediately reach for our phones? Why do we work jobs we hate just to buy things we don't need? Why do we measure our worth in money, titles, or social validation? Why do we tell ourselves that happiness is always in the future, after we get the promotion, after we find the right partner, after we accomplish some distant goal? Because the loop wants us to think that way. The moment we stop and truly question these patterns, something strange happens. The illusion starts to crack. We begin to see that the things we thought we had to do were never real obligations at all. The fears that kept us in place were never truly ours. The desires we were chasing weren't coming from within, but were planted there by forces outside of us. And once we see the illusion for what it is, we gain power over it. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that nothing outside of you defines you. Not your job, not your possessions, not other people's opinions. Imagine realizing that you don't have to play the game anymore. You don't have to run the race, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. That's the first real taste of freedom. But here's the thing, freedom isn't comfortable. In the allegory of the cave, the prisoner who escapes and sees the real world doesn't feel joy at first. He feels pain. His eyes hurt because they're not used to the light. He struggles to make sense of reality because it's so different from what he's always known. And if he were to return to the cave and try to tell the others, they wouldn't believe him. They might even call him crazy. This is what happens when we start breaking free from the loop. First, it's disorienting. We feel lost. The familiar structures of our lives, our routines, our goals, our desires, start to lose their grip, and it's terrifying. We might even try to cling to them again because, even though they were a trap, they were comfortable. But if we resist the urge to retreat, if we sit in that discomfort long enough, something incredible happens. We start to feel light. We start to see through the illusions that once held us captive. We begin to understand that life isn't about running in circles, chasing things that never truly satisfy. It's about waking up. And that's when the real journey begins, because breaking free from the loop isn't just about seeing the cage. It's about learning how to step outside of it fully and completely. But what does true freedom look like? What happens when we finally let go of the illusion? What's waiting for us beyond the loop? The architects of the illusion, if you've truly let yourself question the patterns of your life, the routines, the beliefs, the fears, you might have felt something unsettling. A sense that what you once accepted as reality isn't as solid as it seemed. Maybe you've caught glimpses of the bars of your cage. Maybe for the first time you're considering what exists beyond them. But here's the real question. Who built the cage in the first place? If we are trapped in an existence loop, and if the loop thrives on keeping us blind to its nature, then someone or something must have put it in place. Some say the architects of the illusion are external powerful systems, institutions, or even unseen forces that shape our reality from the shadows. Others say the architects are internal, our own conditioned minds, our unexamined fears, our relentless need for control. The truth is, it's both. The loop is sustained by an intricate web of external influences and internal agreements, and the only way to break free is to understand who or what is truly running the show. Let's start with the external. Throughout history, nearly every civilization has had one thing in common: systems designed to control perception. Whether through religion, politics, media, or culture, human beings have always been guided by forces that define what is true, what is acceptable, and what is real. But here's what most people don't realize. Those systems were never designed to set us free. They were designed to keep us manageable. Think about it. From birth, we are handed the script. We are told what success looks like. We are given rules to follow. We are fed narratives that shape our worldview. And most people never stop to question them. They spend their entire lives chasing goals that were placed in front of them like a carrot on a string. Money, status, approval, believing that fulfillment lies at the end of the chase. But it never does. The loop isn't just about repetition. It's about misdirection. Keeps us so busy running toward illusions that we never stop long enough to ask who put this path in front of me. Take the story of the elephant and the rope. A baby elephant in captivity is tied to a small rope, tries to break free, but it's too weak. Over time, it stops trying. Even when it grows into a massive, powerful creature capable of snapping the rope effortlessly, it remains in place. Why? Because it has been conditioned to believe escape is impossible. We are that elephant. We have been trained from an early age to believe in our limitations. We accept constraints that were placed on us long ago, never realizing we have long since outgrown them. And the ones who place those constraints, the architects of the illusion, have no need to reinforce them anymore. They know we will hold ourselves in place. But let's shift to the internal side of the equation. Even if the world around us is designed to keep us in the loop, the truth is, none of it would work if we didn't agree to it. The external control mechanisms are only as strong as our belief in them, and that's where the real trap is set. The mind is the greatest prison of all. Most people live as prisoners of their own thoughts, their minds constantly replaying past mistakes, projecting future fears, and constructing identities based on past experiences. But here's what few realize: those thoughts are not them. Have you ever stopped and observed your own mind? Not thought about it, but watched it like a silent observer? If you have, you might have noticed something strange. The mind never stops. It chatters endlessly like a radio that can't be turned off. It jumps from one worry to the next, one desire to the next, one memory to the next, never resting. This is by design. A restless mind is an occupied mind. A mind too busy analyzing, planning, regretting, or fearing is a mind that never questions the nature of its own existence. The mind itself is the loop, and as long as we are fully identified with it, we remain trapped. So how do we break free? First, we must recognize that we are not our thoughts. In many spiritual traditions, from Zen Buddhism to Advaita Vedanta, there is a recurring idea. The real you is not the voice in your head. It is the awareness behind the voice. When you watch your thoughts instead of being consumed by them, something shifts. You begin to see that the mental noise is not reality. It's just a program running in the background. Second, we must question our deepest assumptions. If the loop is sustained by belief, then the fastest way to dismantle it is to challenge those beliefs. Not just the obvious ones, like society's definition of success or the fear of failure, but the subtle hidden beliefs, the ones so ingrained that we mistake them for truth. What if time isn't what we think it is? What if our memories are not fixed realities but shifting stories? What if the self, the identity we cling to, is just another construct, another illusion designed to keep us locked inside the loop. The deeper we question, the more the illusion unravels. And that is why most people don't escape, because true freedom is terrifying. Imagine stepping outside of everything you've ever known. Imagine realizing that the structures you relied on, society, identity, even time, were just elaborate illusions. At first, the mind panics. It wants to return to familiar ground. It wants to cling to the loop because the loop is safe. But real liberation comes when we resist that urge. In the story of the Buddha's awakening, after years of searching for truth, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree and faced every illusion, every fear, every deception his mind could throw at him. And instead of fighting them, he simply saw them for what they were, illusions. The moment he did, they lost their power. This is the path to escaping the loop, not fighting it, not resisting it, but seeing through it. When you see the illusion clearly, it starts to dissolve. Because escaping the loop isn't just about dismantling the illusion. It's about discovering what reality looks like beyond it. If the loop is a prison, where is the exit? The door was never locked. Most seekers make a fatal mistake at this stage. They assume that escaping the loop requires effort, that freedom is something to be attained through struggle, discipline, or years of spiritual practice. They believe they must fight against their conditioning, wage war against their ego, or raise their vibration to unlock some cosmic gateway. But this assumption is part of the illusion itself. Because here is the truth. The door to the cage was never locked. This is what the great sages, mystics, and enlightened beings throughout history have tried to tell us. Liberation is not something we achieve. It is something we remember. We are not trapped because of chains. We are trapped because we believe we are trapped. The moment you see through the illusion, the moment you stop playing the game, the loop collapses. But stopping the game is harder than it sounds. There is an old Zen story about a man being chased by a tiger. As he runs, he reaches the edge of a cliff. Desperate, he grabs onto a vine and dangles over the abyss. Above him, the tiger snarls. Below him, another tiger waits. Then he notices a single ripe strawberry growing from the cliffside. He plucks it, puts it in his mouth, and tastes it fully. "Ah," he says, "delicious." To most people, this story makes no sense. But for those who have begun to see the illusion, its meaning is profound. The man realizes that there is no escape from death, no escape from the loop of existence as long as he is identified with the mind and body. And so instead of struggling, instead of fearing, he does something radical. He lets go. He surrenders completely to the present moment, to the experience of what is, and in that surrender, he is free. This is what makes breaking free so difficult. Not because the door is locked, but because we are afraid to walk through it. To escape the loop, you must be willing to lose everything you thought was real. Your attachments, your identity, your deepest assumptions about existence. And that is terrifying. Your mind will resist. It will try to pull you back with thoughts like, "But if I let go, won't I lose myself? If I stop chasing, won't I disappear? If I stop believing in this world, what's left?" These fears are the final defense mechanisms of the loop itself. The illusion does not want to be seen for what it is, because the moment you see it clearly, it vanishes. Seeing through the last veil, there is a moment in every true spiritual awakening where the seeker comes face to face with nothingness. When everything they thought was real dissolves. This moment has been described in countless traditions. In Buddhism, it is called sunyata, the void. In Christian mysticism, it is called the dark night of the soul. In Hinduism, it is the realization of Maya, the great illusion. And it is here, in this space of pure emptiness, that the real question emerges. If everything I believed was an illusion, then who am I? This is where words fail, because the answer is not something that can be spoken. It is something that must be experienced. Some call it awareness. Some call it presence. Some call it the divine, the formless, the eternal consciousness. But it is not something separate from you. It is you. It has always been you. It is the part of you that has been watching all along, behind the thoughts, behind the fears, behind the dream of self. When you realize this, when you truly see it, everything changes. The loop no longer has power over you because you understand that you were never inside it to begin with. So what happens after this realization? What happens when you see through the illusion? Do you disappear? Do you transcend into some higher plane of existence, living outside the loop? No. You remain here, but nothing is the same. The difference is subtle but profound. Before, you were bound by the loop, controlled by fear, chasing illusions. Now you see the game for what it is. You can still play, but you are no longer played by it. This is what the enlightened beings of the past have tried to teach. Not to escape reality, but to see it clearly. Not to reject the world, but to move through it with awareness. To laugh at the game, to play freely, to experience life without being enslaved by it. Imagine for a moment that you are in a dream, a vivid, convincing dream, and then suddenly you become lucid. You realize that everything around you is part of the dream, but you also know that you are safe, that nothing can truly harm you. What would you do? Would you keep running from illusions? Or would you finally live? This is the key to freedom. You do not need to escape life. You only need to wake up within it. And once you do, the loop can no longer trap you because the only thing it ever had power over was the version of you that believed in it. But there is still one final step. What happens after awakening? Walking through the illusion, realizing the illusion is not enough. This is where many seekers stumble. They believe that seeing the illusion will instantly set them free, that the moment of realization is the final step. But it isn't. In fact, this is where the real test begins. Because even after awakening, you must still exist in the world. You must still move through the illusion, interact with people, make choices, experience pain and joy. So how do you do this without being pulled back in? How do you live in the world without falling asleep again? This is the part of the journey that most spiritual traditions refer to as integration. It is the difference between having a moment of insight and truly embodying it, between knowing the truth and actually living it. And the first thing you must understand is this. Just because you see the illusion, it doesn't mean it stops trying to control you. Imagine that you have been underwater your entire life, believing that the ocean floor was all there was. Then one day you swim to the surface and take your first breath of air. The world above the water is stunning, vibrant, limitless. You realize that the ocean was never a prison. It was just all you knew. But now comes the hard part. You still have to dive back down because your life, your relationships, your responsibilities, they are all beneath the surface. And the moment you go back under, the familiar weight of the water surrounds you again. The deep pulls at you. The currents try to carry you away. And worst of all, everyone else is still living as if the ocean floor is all that exists. This is how the loop functions. The illusion does not vanish just because you've seen through it. The world still operates on its rules. People still believe in it. Society still reinforces it at every turn. And if you are not careful, you will get pulled back in, lulled back to sleep, just like a lucid dreamer who forgets they are dreaming. So how do you stay awake? The ancient texts had a phrase, wu wei. It means effortless action or moving with the flow of existence instead of against it. Those who have truly awakened do not fight the illusion, nor do they try to escape it. Instead, they learn to dance with it. They understand that life is still a game, but now they are playing consciously. Before, they were chess pieces being moved by unseen hands, reacting to external forces without awareness. But now they are the players. They can move freely. They can choose how to engage, when to act, when to step back. This is the secret of true freedom. Freedom is not about rejecting the world. It is about no longer being bound by it. You can still participate in society. You can still have relationships, jobs, ambitions, but you do so with the awareness that none of it defines you. You do not cling to it. You do not get lost in the illusion of control. You do not fall back into the old traps of fear and attachment. Instead, you flow. You move through the dream with awareness, knowing it is a dream. You engage with people knowing they are still asleep, but you do not judge them for it. You experience life fully, pain, joy, love, loss, but you do not become these experiences. You remain the observer, the presence behind it all. And because of this, nothing can truly trap you again. Navigating a world that's still asleep. One of the hardest parts of awakening is realizing that most people will not understand. They will not see what you see. They will not feel what you feel. And if you try to explain it to them, they will either dismiss you or misunderstand. Because to those still trapped in the loop, the idea that the loop itself is an illusion is terrifying. It threatens everything they believe in. So how do you interact with a world that is still dreaming? You must learn the art of compassionate detachment. The Buddha once told a story of a man standing by a river. He saw another man drowning, struggling against the current, gasping for air. Out of instinct, he reached out his hand to save him. But the drowning man, in his panic, began to pull him under as well. This is what happens when you try to awaken others before they are ready. You cannot force someone to see. You cannot make them wake up if they are not yet ready. They will resist. They will cling to their illusions, and in doing so, they may try to drag you back down with them. This is why true masters never try to convince anyone. They do not argue. They do not preach. Instead, they simply live their truth. They embody it, and in doing so, they create a presence that others can feel, a presence that naturally draws those who are ready. This is why the greatest spiritual teachers throughout history rarely gave direct answers. Instead, they spoke in parables, in riddles, in silence. They knew that true understanding cannot be given. It must be discovered. And so, as you move through this world, you must learn to do the same. You offer wisdom only when asked. You extend a hand only when someone is ready to take it. And above all, you remain anchored in your own awareness, refusing to be pulled back into the dream, the final illusion, the self. But there is still one final trap. Even after seeing the illusion of the world, even after learning to navigate it, there is still one thing that can keep you bound. The belief in yourself, not your body, not your mind, but the deep fundamental belief that there is still a you who is separate from everything else. This is the final veil, the last illusion. Because the ultimate truth, the one that dissolves the loop entirely, is this: you were never separate to begin with. The entire game, the entire struggle was always happening inside the mind of the dreamer. And the dreamer is not you. The dreamer is existence itself. There is no you and the world. There is only awareness. And when this final illusion collapses, something incredible happens. You do not vanish. You do not lose yourself. Instead, you become everything. You are no longer just a player in the game. You are the game itself, the ocean and the wave, the dreamer and the dream, the infinite experiencing itself through every moment, every breath, every life. This is the final key, the realization that makes all others fall away. The loop was never real. There was never anything to escape. There was only ever this pure presence, pure being. And once you see this, truly see it, the last chain shatters. But one question remains. Now that you are free, what will you do with your freedom? You have seen through the veil, but what now? The path beyond the loop, this is the paradox of awakening. For so long, you have been searching for a way out of the loop, a way to break free from the cycle of existence that seemed to trap you. But now, as the illusion fades, you realize something strange, something you never expected. The loop was never your prison. It was your teacher. There is an old Zen story about a monk who spent years meditating in a cave, searching for enlightenment. One day, as he was deep in meditation, a crow landed on a rock nearby and let out a loud, piercing caw. In that instant, the monk burst into laughter. He had spent his whole life searching for a truth that was always right in front of him. He had been chasing freedom, but he had never actually been bound. The crow's caw was like a slap to his mind. Suddenly, he saw it all, and he laughed. This is the final twist in the journey of awakening. You think you are escaping the loop, but when you finally step beyond it, you realize something profound. There was never a loop to begin with. There was only you, always you, playing a game of forgetting and remembering, hiding and seeking, sleeping and waking. The suffering, the struggles, the lessons. It was all a dream within a dream, a cosmic joke played by the universe upon itself. And now, standing at the edge of everything, you must make a choice. The old self is gone. You are no longer bound by the illusions of the world, the false identities, the fears and desires that once ruled you. You are free. But what does freedom actually mean? Most people assume that enlightenment means disappearing, dissolving into nothingness, leaving the world behind. But this is not true. In fact, the greatest secret of all is that the real journey begins after awakening. Because now you must decide. Do you stay here, silent and detached, watching the world like a ghost? Or do you step back into the dream, not as a prisoner, but as a guide? This is why so many spiritual masters return to the world. They do not need to, but they choose to, not to escape suffering, but to help others see through it. Not because they are bound by karma, but because they are bound by love. The Buddha walked back into the world after enlightenment. Jesus returned after 40 days in the desert. Lao Tzu left wisdom for those who would follow. This is the true path, the path of those who wake up but do not turn away, the path of those who move through the illusion with open eyes, knowing it is a dream but loving it all the same. Because even though it is all an illusion, it is a beautiful one. So how do you live after the loop? How do you exist in a world that you now know is a dream, living as the dreamer? The answer is simple. You become the dreamer. Instead of being lost in the illusion, you begin to shape it. You move through life with grace, not because you need anything from it, but because you enjoy the dance. You love freely, not because you seek completion, but because love is your natural state. You act with purpose, not because you fear death, but because creation is your birthright. You become light, a presence that transforms everything around you. Not because you try, but because it is who you are. There is nothing more to seek, nothing more to escape, nothing more to achieve. You have always been free, but now you finally know it. And in that knowing, a strange and wonderful thing happens. The world, which once seemed like a prison, now appears as a playground. The people who once seemed like strangers now feel like reflections of yourself. The suffering, which once seemed unbearable, now reveals itself as a teacher. And suddenly you understand why you came here in the first place. Not to escape, not to win, but to experience, to live. And so the loop does not end. It transforms. And you, the awakened one, walk back into the dream, not as its prisoner, but as its creator.